Okay. This week's guest on the Inside Running podcast could possibly be the fastest 400-meter runner we've ever had on the show in the last 5 years. He is a well-respected and renowned name in Australia, as he has worked as the creator of the Resilience Project and has partnered with many elite sports teams, over 1,000 schools and 500 workplaces, and has reached over 1 million people. I'm looking forward to having a conversation today about how running fits into all that. So welcome to the podcast, Hugh van Cuylenburg. How you going?
Brady, I'm good, mate. I probably have to, just what you said before about being the fastest 400-meter runner.
I think you are.
Well, potentially only because the other guests you've had haven't timed themselves over 400 meters. That might be. In fact, I reckon a few of them would probably run my time, repeat effort, like would do it 5 laps in a row if they wanted to.
Well, I think, Ollie Horse, Stewie probably have kicked down faster at the end of a 1,500 or 3K. This didn't take anything away from your 400-meter PB, which we'll get to in a second. But when I was looking through the guest list, I'm pretty sure none of them have done an all-out 400 as quick as you have.
That surprises me. That really surprises me. But I'll take it. I'll definitely take it.
Definitely take it. Hugh, you joined us from Melbourne today. How's things on your Tuesday afternoon?
It's a little bit frustrating today because I had planned a session before this, but we just had our third child, and I honestly, last night I checked my Garmin before, I had 2 hours and 10 minutes sleep, and I just think it's counterproductive running after 2 hours and 10 minutes sleep. I think you just have to just park it and go, it's not happening today. I'll have to revisit it again tomorrow. So a little bit frustrated today because I did have a really good session planned, but not to be.
Yeah, you got to be flexible. And I think I did check our Instagram DMs at about 7 a.m. this morning just to organise this conversation today. And I think it said you were active like 4 hours ago or 3 hours ago. And I'm thinking, he's been up in the early hours of the morning, so that would make sense.
Yeah, some further evidence to it was my 5-year-old who was up from midnight till 5 last night, and I just couldn't get him back down. I turned to Instagram at about probably 3 in the morning for something to do because I knew I wasn't going back to sleep. So, good pickup.
Hey, Hugh, what we do on this podcast when we have guests is we often introduce them by their personal best. So I've only got 2 PBs down here for you at the moment, but we'll start with the 400. I haven't got the tenths and hundredths of a second, but I think you're a 52-second guy over 400 meters. I know you've won a couple of masters over 35 and maybe over 40 titles down here in Victoria. So have I got that one right? And any stories about it?
Well, this is an interesting one. I have so many stories about this. This is just before we kick off. I have done so many podcast interviews this year, and I don't care if the other podcasts are listening to this. This is the most excited I've been to do a podcast. I've wanted an excuse to talk about running so much. I try and crowbar it into other podcasts, and they steer me away very quickly because it's not what they want to talk to me about. This for me is like in fact, there was a stage where we were getting ready for the national tour, and my manager said, no more podcasts. You're doing too many podcasts. I need you to just rest. And she said, so I'm saying no to everything. And I said, oh, just so you know, if Inside Running contact you, it's a yes for them. And she's like, who's that? And I went, doesn't matter. It's a yes from them. So
we'll take that. Thank you.
This is very exciting for me. So
we got a whole hour.
Yeah, I've already wasted a bit of it, so I'll get right into it. But yeah, I guess my running story is such a weird one in that athletics for me as a kid. Now, the other question for you is this a Shoe Geeks episode as well, or this is just because I could do Shoe Geeks like you would not believe, but I'm happy just to focus on running if you'd like.
This is on the weekly one, but I have got a few questions about your shoes of choice, so I'm going to work it in there. So don't worry about that. So I've got you covered.
So let me get back to my PB. So I did run a 52. I started athletics when I was 38 years old, which is a strange time to pick up athletics. I did it at school, and it was actually my favourite sport. It's a sport I love most, but I did a little bit better at cricket, and I ended up pursuing cricket for a long time, much longer than I should. But I used to play for Melbourne University, and behind the Melbourne University main oval, so this is grade cricket in Melbourne, there's an athletics track. And every Saturday I'd stand there at fine leg in between my overs, and I'd look over my shoulder at the AS track, and I'd look at people training, and I'd honestly just think, I wish I was doing that. That's what I want to be doing. But it took me till I was 38 years old and to start again. And when I was at school, I did 1s and 2s. And loved it. And I remember in year 12, I ran and I will get to answer your question in a minute. But
okay, yeah.
I was an okay 100-meter and 200-meter runner at school level. I was in the APS, went to Carey Grammar, and I was okay in years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and they're all the scholarship boys from Haileybury and Caulfield, really quick 1s and 2s runners. And year 12 came along, and it was the first meet of the season down in Geelong. And we would always do paper, scissors, rock to see who had to go in the first heat because no one wanted to get smashed by the Caulfield boys. And I lost it. And I was like, damn it, I have to go in the first heat with all the really quick boys. This will be embarrassing. I'd done a year with the VIS for cricket, the Victorian Institute of Sport, and basically they just smashed us with speed stuff all winter. And I hadn't realised it was speed stuff. It was this thing they called circuit running. No, unit running. They called it unit running, which was basically a long 15-minute jog followed by short interval sprints. And we did that all winter. And I got up on the blocks and it was 100 and I ran it in a 10.78 and won pretty easy. And I was like, wow, what the hell? That was weird. And that all that season, I ran 10.8s and loved it and ran some real quick 2s as well. But then school finished and I was like, okay, I guess you just stop. I guess you just stop now. I think you just stop running. I'll go and play cricket. And yeah, then when I was 38 years old, I said to my wife, I'm going to do athletics. I'm going to do 400s because my hamstrings will not cope with a 1 and a 2. And I said, come down to the Oval with me. There was a grass track near where we lived back when we lived near Mornington Secondary College there. And I said, can you time me for a 400? She said, what time do you want to get? And I said, I don't know. I'll probably get about a 55, 56, I don't really know. And I ran 69 seconds.
Okay, so just over 250k pace. It's not disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great for 400, considering I was hoping to get a 55.
Yeah, true.
And I thought, that's so embarrassing. I think I'm never going to do athletics ever again. But the next day I woke up and went, no, that's why I need to do it. I'm so out of shape. And just trained so hard. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just ran a lot and did lots of sessions and won the Masters 3 years ago, but that's because I was the only one in my age group, age 35 to 40. No one else was in it. No one else
Men 35. I did see that when I was doing some research, but still, you're not meant to tell people that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I know I should keep it quiet, but it's ridiculous when you run a lap by yourself and there's no one else there. Like there's no one cheering. And I was just like, why is that guy running by himself?
Oh, they didn't put you in with the other guys. They could have put you in lane 9 or 8 or something out the outside.
Yeah, I know. They should have. But instead I did a solo race. And then the next year there's a few more athletes. But anyway, very long story short, my PB for the 400, I did a 52.1 in end of last season. Which kind of surprised me because I usually run mid 53s, but it was nice to.
At what age? What age were you when you hit that PB?
41.
Yeah, so it's not the traditional way that you get into sprinting. And was there ever like a recreational running, kind of a park run or a local fun run or anything in that gap there, or just went straight from nothing to sprinting?
No, I went through a stage where I was pretty full on I'd run the tan.
Yeah.
But that's all I'd do. I just ran the tan 3 times a week and I was really
and
competitive with myself. Yeah, I never thought to do like interval sessions to try and improve or just shorter speed stuff. I just ran that 3.78 Ks 3 times a week religiously, and I'd get it, and I was so flat that I never got quicker. I just stayed at the same pace because I wasn't training properly, and then I'd always end up with like tendonitis in my left knee and injuries would just always get me. And I never loved it. I just did it because I felt like I should be running. And then when I reached 38, I was like, well, I used to be a sprinter and I love that. I don't think I'm built for long distance. But then when I tried to sprint, I just couldn't. And it's an amazing feeling to actually get better at something the older you get. Like I think most things in life, we kind of drop away. And certainly with cricket, after the age of 22, 23 as a bowler, I just got slower and slower and shitter basically. And to the point where I only played because I love the club. I didn't like playing cricket anymore. So now I've gone, each week I get quicker and quicker. To be honest, I don't think I'll get much quicker than a 52. I think I may have peaked, but if I can stay below 53, 54 for the next few years, that'll be a great feeling to do. I cannot put into words, and I know everyone listening will resonate with this, but just the experience of athletics and running, I just love it so much. It's all I think about. Like I've got some big things happening in my life, but it's honestly, I just lie in bed thinking about running. That's all I do. That's all I do.
I'm the same. First thought when I wake up every day, I'm like, what day is it today? And do I have a session or a long run or an easy jog? Like how does my run impact my day before it even starts?
It's so true. Like, and even now, what I've realized, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, and some of your listeners know, have you heard of the Feed the Cats program? Have you heard Feed the Cats?
No, I haven't, no.
So if you look up Feed the Cats, he's a university coach over in the US, track coach. And he's come up with this program called Feed the Cats, which I've just come across recently. And his theory basically is for sprinters, like cats don't ever run. They're either resting or they're sprinting. So his program is like we're all out speed, 3 times a week, and then we're resting and doing nothing. Where I've come from the mentality of playing footy and cricket, it's like the harder you work, the more you get out of it. So I was doing sessions every day, obsessively running as much as, and I'm on my Garmin going, I've got to get 30 Ks plus a week, and otherwise I'm being lazy. But this guy's theory, it's called Feed the Cats. He's a compelling speaker when you listen to him talk about it. It's all out speed or it's nothing. And the sessions are quick. And I've sort of been following that recently. But to your point, I lie in bed watching YouTube videos at night. Like, I've got this, what was the example? I had a talk at Hamer Hall early in the year. It was 2,800 people, right? It was a sellout, really big night. And my manager's come into the room to check all's good. And I had YouTube up there. And I was like, this guy does this session, right? He does 3 200-meter sprints. That's it with his sprinters. And she goes, are you serious? And I was like, I wasn't even thinking about this. I was just running. There's something about it. I have a lot of people come up to me saying, oh, I'm struggling with this or depression or anxiety. And I honestly feel like saying to them, Brian, just take these pair of brand new shoes and wear them out and come back to me in 6 months' time when you're wearing these things out and let's see how you're going. I just reckon running is such a therapeutic, healing, building activity. It's just unreal.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting more into that. And I couldn't agree more. Like that, just how you feel afterwards and how you can attack the day. And, if you've had a tough day, how you feel after you've had an afternoon jog or anything like that. It just is remarkable. But the other running result I did find from you was a 5K at the Melbourne Marathon 5K. I think this was 2018. We call this the Sinead Diver year because it was pretty hot and windy and pretty much 99% of the people ran a bad marathon that day other than Sinead Diver. But I got you down for 23:15. That's you?
I don't even, I did run in that. That's pretty slow, isn't it?
Oh, that's not too bad. Just over 4-minute K pace.
Okay.
It was about 4:30s.
Okay. It was why did I do that? I can't remember. Oh, that's right. For work, we did this. We got all our staff at the Resilience Project and we said, we're going to do an event together. It's going to be a special day. I think it'd be great if we did something. There was only about 15 of us at the time, but I said, we're going to do it together. And what I didn't realize was we didn't have a meeting point. I didn't realize how big these things were. So no one saw anyone at any point of the day. And we didn't catch up till when then, like most people went home because they're sick of waiting for everyone else's event. And I think everyone else did the half marathon. And I was like, I don't think I'll make a half marathon. My knees just blow up when I get past 5Ks. So that's it. That's great. Gee, very good research. I'm very impressed with this, Brady.
It's actually very easy. You just go to this certain website, type in a name, and it spits out any fun run you've ever done. It appears in a big list. Which for you, there was only just one result popped up there. So it's interesting. Like, that was one of my questions. Like going to the longer distances because everything you explain, and obviously, you're pretty out there with your own podcast, The Imperfects, and your 2 books, and people would have heard you speak and stuff before. But a lot of things that you talk about, I think, are more suited to the longer distance and that meditative state and jogging along and kind of more the lower heart rate stuff, I'd probably call it, where you can kind of clear the mind, I guess. Compared to the sprinting. So are there any kind of aspirations to go longer or even middle distance?
So it's just such a great question and such a good observation. I think most people know the feeling of a longer run where you can start off feeling a bit stressed and you've got issues on your mind and then they just disappear for a while. And then by the end of the run, not only are they gone, you've come up with solutions for your problems. It's such a meditative escape. So when I started doing 400s, I didn't know how to train for them. I was just by myself on a grass track and I was doing like 600 reps and 500 rep sets of because I didn't know. I thought, I'll try and do more than 400. That'll get me. But I probably needed to because I was weighing at about 80. I'm 6 foot and I was weighing about 83, 84 kilograms when I started running and I was desperately out of shape. And I think that helped me lose a lot of the weight. I'm down to 73 now, which is probably a better weight for me for racing. But effectively, I was training for 1500s and 800s. I wasn't really training for speed and for sprinting. And then I, through our podcast, met Katrina Bissett. And she said, why don't you come and train with us? And I ended up training with her and Peter Fortune and all the girls in that group, an incredible group of runners, Abby Delamont's and
just on that, because you've spoken about it many times. I've heard the story a few times, but did you just cold call, hit her up to come on your show? And then it went to, you'd come down and do some training with us if you like running?
I was sitting at a cafe in Alphington and I was reading the Herald Sun and there was an article about how Katrina had just broken the 800-meter record. And I'd never heard of her before. And I was just getting into athletics and I saw that and then I read it and I was like, oh, good on her, that's amazing. But then the last paragraph said, Katrina got into running to help deal with her anxiety and depression. I was like, wow, that's really interesting just for our podcast. So I sent her a DM basically and just said, "Hey, look, I love athletics and would love to have you on the podcast. Do you want to catch up and talk about it?" We just hit it off so well when we caught up that we sort of pursued a friendship more than doing the podcast. And it was like during our first catch up, she said, "You should come and run with us." And I said, "Don't be ridiculous. That's just, I'm not doing that." But over a few months, she sort of persisted and said, "You've got to come join us. You've got to come join us." And this is early on when I was probably running the 400 in about 59 seconds, maybe a minute. And
It's pretty special because the athletic world, sorry to interrupt, is very closed off in a way. Like if you said to me, it's like I went down a park run and I saw a 16-minute guy and he said, "Come and do some training with me." I'm a 20-minute guy. I'd get that, or a half marathoner or a marathoner. But athletic guys are really like a bit niche and a bit in their cliques. And it's kind of actually awesome to hear that story happened and she kept persisting to try and get you there.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big a deal it was. I mean, my first thing was, that's ridiculous. I'm embarrassed to join you because I just don't. I'm not in that. I thank you, but it's not for me. Like, I'll just embarrass myself. And she said, "Look, it's just going to be me and a couple of the girls. You'll love the girls. Fort's great. You'll love Fort. He's pretty easygoing." So I just thought, I'm so nervous and so scared of doing this. I think I just have to do it. And I remember it was at the Lakeside Stadium, and I turned up there, and she got me through the VIS entrance there, and we walk onto the track, and the first thing I saw was Peter Bowl training in full flight. And I was
Shirt
like,
off?
Get off. What do you think?
Yeah.
Shirt off, and the whole group. So there's 6 of them.
Joey Gang, Jeff Risley, all of them shirts off.
Yep, all there. And all of them there's 7 of them, and I'm counting, there's like 84 abs amongst all of them. And they're just tearing around the track. And I said to Katrina, "I thought it was just us." And she goes, "Oh, in our group, yeah, but the boys are training. And there's another group over there. Oh, and there's Lyndon Hall. She's running just there." And I was so embarrassed. I'm wearing tracksuit pants like a dad would wear when he's watching the footy. I'm wearing this baggy T-shirt. And there's actually a photo. Someone took a photo of the boys training and put it online. And I'm actually in the background standing there with my hands on my hips, just looking like, just in shock, like, what the fuck am I doing here? And I joined in the session. I was so embarrassed the whole way because I couldn't keep up. I was feeling really embarrassed. You might know Abby Delamont, who's an incredible 800, used to be 4s. And she turned up just before the session started, and she's such an incredibly nice and warm person. She gave me the biggest hug and goes, "Welcome to the group. I'm so pumped." She had no idea who I was. She's probably thinking, "What on earth is this old man doing joining us?" But hey, he's very welcome. She was so nice. I was like, well, they're a very nice community. I'll do this one training with them. It's a funny story. I'll tell everyone about it on the podcast because this is just embarrassing. And the session we did was 10 200s on off a minute or off 2 minutes. And then a 400 at the end. And I've never felt pain like it, but it was the most addictive. It was like playing golf and hitting one good shot and you go, "Well, I'm coming back to that one good shot." The feeling I had afterwards, I was so hooked, and I thought, well, I'm going to go away and work pretty hard on my own so that I do actually fit in, so I can actually fit into this group and be here on my own, right? But yeah, it was an amazing. And then I was with Fort and Katrina for the next year and a bit, really, and it was an incredible experience. And by the end, I was able to keep up with them. And yeah, I mean, just seeing people, like seeing Peter Bowl up close running and Katrina Bissett running, it's something else. Like it's you feel like you're watching the best in the world, and it's just unreal.
And in lane 2, that close to them, do you know what I mean? If they're going past in lane 1 or they're taking you on the outside, like getting the best seat in the house of watching some of those guys operate is even different from being in the stands. Did you know who Peter Fortune was at the time and the Kathy Freeman connection? And that would have been pretty special as well.
I did. I knew I knew about Peter Fortune. I was I still am a huge Kathy Freeman fan. And so I was very nervous about this Peter Fortune guy. I was just expecting him to go, "What are you doing here? Like, I know Katrina invited you down, but I'm trying to create a high-performance elite environment here. We don't need you chasing him around, this old man chasing him around." But he was just so unbelievably welcoming. And he said, "We would love to have you in the group." He said, "I don't coach men as a rule. They just tend to not, but it's great to have you here." And we sort of started this. We've got this great. I spoke to him. I gave him a call a couple of days ago. We've got this great friendship. It's almost like a fatherly type figure in my life. He's this. He's an incredible man. I don't see him as much anymore with Katrina now being coached by Ned up in Sydney. But I've been busy of late. But I do plan to stay close to Fort because he's a fantastic man with a great wealth of knowledge. And I love that kind of person who he may not have studied, done all the study and all that kind of stuff, but he's just got this incredible wealth of knowledge about the sport of running, 400s in particular.
Yeah, it was really well documented in that documentary on ABC they did on Kathy Freeman a couple
Yes.
of years ago. And every time he spoke on that, he didn't say much, but every time he spoke, it's like, oh, that's just a great quote about coaching and teaching and life. And maybe he doesn't have all the qualifications and all the things next to his name, but what he's been able to do in the athletics world is, quite special. What did you learn from them in the early days? So you're coming in super green, not knowing a lot about running or athletics or how to kind of train, and what were your kind of takeaways in that first maybe month or two?
Oh, there's so much. Oh, so I had no idea what to expect, and I couldn't have been more green. I played 8 years of Aussie rules footy at an amateur club. I played 22 years of Premier cricket here in Melbourne, where it's a huge team environment where quite genuinely the better off your teammate is, the better you're going to go. And it's all about the team winning. To then go to an environment where it's an individual sport, but at training, when you work as a team, I found it fascinating because I was like, I couldn't get my head around the dynamics of like, these girls are in competition, like they race each other, but they're training together. So it's almost like competition at training, but it's a friendly environment. But I can tell there's a lot on the line. Every single time we take off, there's a lot on the line here. And there's a lot of, not in a bad way, but a lot of ego at stake. So I found that fascinating. I'll tell you what I did find was that, first of all, when you run as a group, you run so much quicker.
Which can be a bad thing.
Yeah, it can be.
If you're not ready for it, yeah.
Yeah, and it shocked me because they take off, and quite a few times you go, whoa, I can't keep up, but you have to because you're in the middle. Like you don't have a choice. You're amongst all these people. So you just find a way to. So what I found was you push yourself to a whole new level as a group. What I'm used to with football and cricket is the coach will sit you down at the start and they give you this huge explanation of what training's about, why we're doing this session, where it fits into the overall plan. And there's a lot of motivation as well around, like a lot of pep talks, and we got to get this done for this reason. You can do this. You're amazing, and blah, blah, blah. And with running, to me, so far, my experience is, here's a session. This is what we're doing. You just do it. You just smash it out, which is very different to me. It took a while to get used to that because I remember one day a few people were late and I think it was bad weather or something, and people were sort of arriving at different times. Like, oh, you just start now, you start now. And I was going, no, we need to do this together. Guys, we can't. What are we doing? Let's have a chat about this. People are late. That's okay. Let's talk. But it was like, where's this person? I don't know where they are. Let's just go. And to me, it's just a very different experience from what I'm used to. But what have I learned? I haven't even answered the question, buddy.
That's right. I've had a good chat about it. You've kind of answered a few times.
I'm very inspired. I'm very inspired watching everyone else train. I find it an inspiring environment to be in. I mean, they're obviously the best in Australia, and a lot of them are the best amongst the best in the world. So I do what I feel like when I played cricket at grade level, which is a really good level. It's like the level below first class cricket. You'd often get these guys turning up we had 5 sides, and they would turn up to play in the fists, and they were never that good at cricket, but they loved it because they were training with first 11 players. I felt like that 5th 11 player turning up to running, and I just felt grateful that they were happy to have me. And I just feel, I mean, some people probably still, I'm sure some of the people see me training going, what is he doing here? But for the most part, everyone's pretty welcoming.
Do you, because you do have a front row seat of it, and I'm sure you ride the roller coaster when they then go off to Com Games or World Champs or Olympics or whatever it is, and then you see how the sport kind of gets treated in the mass media. Like, does that do your head in compared to other sports you work with? I guess like the AFL and the NRL. Like, I was actually surprised when you said there was an article on Cat Bissett in the Herald Sun, because we wouldn't see a lot of media in Australia here. But I guess now that you've seen what they put in and what kind of recognition they get, must be interesting observations.
I'm very passionate about this. So so this year, my 2 clubs I worked with was Queensland State of Origin. I was with them. So the highs of that experience, but then I was also with Carlton Football Club this year in the AFL, who missed out on the finals by 0.5%. Are the first team ever to be in the top 8 the whole season and drop out the last.
I'm a Collingwood supporter as well. I must just say that. We actually talked about it on the start of this episode that you're going to be on. So I'll just put that in there.
Okay, so and in that environment, I'm on the Queensland State of Origin camp before State of Origin 1, and everything's like, let's be careful we don't go here because that'll end up in the paper. We don't want an article about this. We're doing this, but guys, the media will be there. So when we're there, make sure you're dressed in this stuff. Now, they're pretty elite. Don't get me wrong. They're elite group, and the AFL, to be in an AFL side, you have to be in the top 700 footballers in Australia or whatever it is, something like that. Maybe it's a bit less. Maybe it's top 600, whatever it is. It does my head in that there is no coverage for someone, like Katrina Bissett, who is Australia's fastest ever woman over 800 metres. She's in the top. She came fifth in the Commonwealth. That Commonwealth race was an elite standard. I think some of the races weren't as elite. That was elite, her 800.
Yeah.
You look at Stewie, Ollie Hoare. You look at, oh my gosh, you look at Peter Bowl. Like, he got a little bit of media around the Olympics time, a little bit around the World Championships. But to be in the top 4 fastest men in the world over that distance, that is so much more elite than 99.9% of the AFL population, 99.5% of the NRL population. There's always, the other thing that really annoys me is that, I actually probably used to buy into it, but I used to, when I was playing football, I would often hear people saying, "Oh, he could be a Olympic runner if he wanted to.
Yeah.
This guy could, if you wanted to be a runner, he could be." And I used to buy into that bit going, yeah, he's an amazing runner. I've seen the best in the world up close. There's only one AFL player currently who could probably mix it in Blitzards, I reckon.
Well, he wasn't. He came from athletics. Yeah.
You
I used to race him back
athletics.
in the day. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, there you go. So you can attest that. He was obviously quite quick. The rest of them have got a great tank, but they don't have that extraordinary speed. And that, there was a story that back in the day, Shane Crawford was the one that everyone used to speak about and say, Shane Crawford could have gone to the Olympics if he wanted to do for 800s. Well, he had, like, halfway through, when he was at his fittest, he actually had as you probably know, but he had a season of athletics, training for 800s.
Yeah.
And then he raced one summer. He raced an 800, and all these athletes were like, I'll race him. And I think he ran a good time. Don't get me wrong, like a 154 or something, 153 or something, but he got beaten. He got smashed by a lot of 800 meter runners who are not even in the top 10 in Victoria. So it's just a ridiculous narrative that AFL footballers get way too excited about their running ability. They're extremely fit. Don't get me wrong, they're elite athletes. I'm not saying they're not. What they do, their strength, getting knocked over, get back up. They've got this incredible tank. They can run 15 Ks whilst getting smashed. That's incredible. But they don't have the speed. They're not natural runners like our athletes are. They are. Like, my dad tells me stories. I'm so jealous of this. Dad tells me stories that Dad went to Melbourne High School, and he tells me stories about finishing school on Thursdays or Friday afternoons, and the whole school would walk to Olympic Park and would watch athletes. Like, there'd be meets, and there would be like 5,000 people watching, because it's like, Peter Normans and whoever has come, they're racing, and it's like, and people used to come to Australia. The best athletes in the world used to come to Australia and race, and Dad said it was back page of the paper. It was back page of the Sun, of the Herald. Athletics was huge. It just, I don't know. I wasn't overly interested in athletics for 20 years, between the age of 20 and sort of 18 and 38. So I don't really know what happened, but how it doesn't get more media. Surely people watch the Commonwealth Games and they loved it. Like, people were so into the stories. Like, it infuriates me. First of all, the conversation around, these footballers would be Olympians if they wanted to. No, they would not. These runners are extraordinary. Like, they're the best in the world. But it also annoys me how it just gets nowhere near enough coverage.
How do we fix it, Hugh? I've asked this a few times on this podcast over the years, because people that come into the world understand the problem. And you're right, it does my head in when I'm watching the AFL and BT will say some call about he could have been an Olympic runner if he chose that path or whatever. And you're like, no, he couldn't. But it's one thing to name it, and it's another thing to come up with a solution. Any ideas ticking along in your brain? With the Kat Bissett example, like, how do we make her more of a household name? Someone pretty close to you.
Well, I think it starts before that. I think we need to start before that. I don't like bagging things in public. It's not my go at all. But I have found the experience of doing athletics. I love the event. I love training. I love racing. But the distance I got to travel to go and compete every Saturday, the way it's structured, I can only do a 400 or a 100. I can't do a 2 and a 4 together. There's no I mean, there's the high velocity club in Victoria, which is like, there's a bit of atmosphere around that, bit of a crowd. There's got to be a better way of structuring it. It needs to be structured in a better way, a more user-friendly model. They should have 2 or 3 photographers that they've got there. I mean, these days, kids want to have everything on social media. There should be a really good photographer down there getting unreal footage, sharing it with these kids so they can share on their socials everything, to create a bit more hype around socials. We should be doing more to attract kids to athletics in the first place. I mean, now, I'm not saying me, for example, but I got beaten in year 12 at the APS final by a kid called Bo Betts. I ran a 10.78. He ran a 10.64 or something. No one came up to me after that meet and said, "Do you want to do athletics?" Because you could, now you may not be an Olympian, but you'd be good at a club. Like, you'd be a good club sprinter. No one did that. I went to cricket because every club in Melbourne was asking me to go. Well, not every club, that sounds arrogant. A few clubs were saying to me, "You should come and play with us." I even had footy clubs saying, "Why don't you come and play with us?" I wasn't that good at football. I was probably better I was much better at athletics, but no one said to me, "Why don't you come down to our club?" I feel like
pathway wasn't there.
Yeah, that's okay. You've summarized it much better. I think, and I don't want to offend anyone here, because I know there's probably someone's job is pathways, and I'm sure they're probably desperately underfunded and under-resourced. But if there's a way to create a less traditional approach to athletics, maybe, cricket has changed so much over the years to capture a broader market. T20 is a horrible format, and I can't stand it. But what it's done is it's not for me. It's not for people who love cricket. It's for people who don't love cricket. That's why T20 is there, and it's captured this new market of people who don't like cricket. Now they do. There needs to be some kind of drastic pivot to try and capture people. There are certain events that I don't watch, right? And I'm sure there's a hierarchy I'm sure the 100's the most watched event going around. So there needs to be a way that we have more 100-meter sprints. I love the footage of Usain Bolt running a 150 through the streets of London or wherever it was. Maybe we pay a lot of money. Who's the fastest man in the world, and we pay him a lot of money to come and race on the Sydney Harbour or whatever. I don't know, have a 100-meter track somewhere. Just that kind of stuff. I know there's someone listening right now going, "You got no idea, mate. You're so new to this sport." But that's probably my take, is that I am new to this sport, and I am seeing things that to me remind me of cricket when I started in the 1990s. It's very traditional. I've been yelled at by so many bloody volunteers, and I love the volunteers. I think they're great. You need volunteers, but I've been yelled at by that many volunteers who still treat it like it was probably the sport in the 70s and 80s. That I stood on the blocks before my 400. I stood in the middle of the blocks because they felt like they're going to slip. This guy goes, "Oi, Melbourne Uni, get off the bloody blocks!" Like, yelled at me, and I turned around and said, "Are you talking to me?" And he goes, "Yeah, get off your blocks." I'm like, "Mate, I'm right here. You don't need to yell at me. I'm right here." But now I was 41 when that happened. I could deal with it. If I was a 17-year-old kid and I got yelled at by an old man for standing the blocks, I'd go, "I don't need to be doing this. I don't need to be doing this sport. I want to go and hang out with my mates, go to the beach in the summer," because that's what you're competing against as a summer sport, going to the beach with your mates. So we've got to make it, to me, it could be a friendlier, more easier to navigate, catchier. We can still have the traditional meets. That can still happen, but there's got to be a way to capture. Maybe you look at okay, so you look at an AFL competition like the amateurs, and you have a special event where you invite, every club nominates their quickest person over 400 metres or 800 or 100, whatever it is, and you have an Athletics Victoria or Athletics Australia sponsored event where you actually find out who is the fastest amateur or local footballer in Australia, and then you talk to them about maybe trying to, you're not going to make it a footy. I don't know, stuff like that. I think we could. I don't know. Maybe they already do that. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I'm a bit heated about that.
That's good. And I love your official story, because the long-time listeners of the show will know I shared this story maybe 2020. I was in the call room of the Australian 5K Championships. I don't know how I got in there. I think I was the worst guy in the best race. And Stewie was in there, just mind his own business, sitting down on the seat. And he likes to put his numbers, sticks them onto his legs. Which he does in every Diamond League, every Olympic final, every World Championship race, whatever he's doing. But in Victoria, you need to use 4 pins and stick them on your actual shorts, both sides. And the official was absolutely ripping him to shreds, like, "You will not be racing if they're not on the shorts properly." And he's just like, head down. He just wanted to stay so relaxed. And it just reminded me of being in about grade 4 and the deputy principal or principal just ripping a kid to pieces for not behaving properly. And I'm just like, this is the greatest runner we could potentially have as a distance runner. And this is how we're treating him. And she was probably just a volunteer, just doing her job. This is black and white. This is where you put the stickers. But yeah, needs some kind of like flexibility there, I'm sure.
Totally.
Hey, talk to me about flow state. I'm pretty sure your second book, there was a chapter on it. So you've kind of, when I read that, actually I listened to it as an audio book. And I remember listening to that chapter being like, this is distance runners. We spend more time in flow state, I think, than so many more people, depending, because just because we don't have many distractions in our races, we don't have to do much. We just kind of like run in a straight line for 42K or 21K or whatever race you're doing. And this really resonated with me. And obviously you've done the research and been able to compose a chapter on it. But what did you learn? What are kind of the takeaways if people haven't heard about flow state before? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who this will connect with.
It's flow state is what got me through COVID, the lockdowns. Flow is the activity that you're doing that you love so much and also you're really good at. You have a natural aptitude towards it, that when you're doing it, it's like time sort of no longer exists. Someone could stop you and say, how long have you been doing this for? And you'd go, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not sure. You would say something like, I don't know, 5 minutes. Turns out it's been 25 minutes. If someone stopped you in this while you're doing this activity and said, what are you thinking about? Your answer would probably be, I'm actually not even thinking. This is just happening. For a lot of people, it could be playing music. For some people, it could be gardening. Other people, it could be, for me, it's a very weird one for me. There's two options, but two examples. One is public speaking. I just love it so much that I just get lost in it and it just happens. The other one for me is running. But as a lot of listeners will have the same thing. And it is, researchers are saying it is one of the greatest things you can do for your mental health is to spend time in flow. The problem is we spend a lot of time in flow as kids growing up because we just do the activity we love, whether it's skateboarding or whether it's being in a band or whatever it is. We have time to do that. We make time for it. It's like it's our hobby. We all participate in our hobby. Then when we reach adulthood, we kind of park it for a bit and go, well, I don't have time for that. I've got to get the kids here. I've got to study this, or I've got to get to work. And we stop participating in flow. It's one of the greatest things you can do for your mental health is to spend time doing something that you're really good at, that you love so much that your brain just sort of stops thinking because you're so in it. And middle distance running, I don't say this in most of the podcasts I do because most people listening won't get it. But I feel like I don't do middle distance anymore. But even when I was first training for 400s, and I didn't know how I was meant to train, I'd do 2 longer runs. When I say long for me, it might be a 10K and a 5K a week. It's like, give me probably 5 or 10 minutes and then I'm on. And it's just like, you can feel it. Just like all the worries of the world just disappear and there's nothing happening. Before you know it, your run's finished. And you realize you haven't really thought about much. It's just been happening. And I think the more time we spend in flow, the better off we are emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, and I think like the cutting some of the use of technology within running as well. Like I've ran 2 PBs this year, and both the times I stuffed up my watch. So I'm a kind of operator that likes to know my splits, likes to know what's happening. And I just, didn't push the right button twice, but I found myself in a race where it's like, you don't have any external factors here telling you how you're going. So just pretty much run as hard as you can. And both times I got to the finish line, I was like, shit, that's way quicker than I've ever gone before. And I put this down to similar stuff that you're saying, because I didn't have a watch to look down at every 3 minutes when it beeped. I could just be like, okay, this is just enter it and run hard.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I actually, on that very topic, I got Strava and I had it for 2 weeks and I just had to get rid of it because I was running for the wrong reason. It was all about external validation. Anything you do for external validation in life is going to make you miserable. Everything needs to be about internal validation. So you're doing it for yourself. So say, for example, if the reason you run is to make your dad happy because he was a runner and he just wants you to run, you're doing it to make him happy. That's not the right reason. But if you run for the feeling you get when you're running fast, when you doing a good time, or just when you're in it, that's what's going to make you happy. And I found that with Strava, I was just comparing myself to everyone all the bloody time. And then I couldn't do a recovery run because I'd be doing it in like 5-minute Ks. I'm like, this is embarrassing. I can't do this. I got to. So I'd go, it wouldn't be a recovery run. I'm pushing myself too hard because people were going to see it. I was like, I can't. I can't have people thinking I'm just really slow. And then on a rest day, I'd see someone I was a bit competitive with running. I'm like, oh, I got to go and do it, and I get injured. So, on the topic of running for mental health, if Strava works for you, go for it. If it's your motivation, keeps you motivated, then go for it. But for me, it caused more stress than it was worth. It really did. And I reckon running without your watch, just going for a run without your watch every now and again, so you properly disconnect from everything. I mean, it's hard because we're so trained to just everything needs to be in the Garmin. But I heard Stewie tell a story. I think it was on your podcast. Stewie talked about how he doesn't he doesn't have Strava, or he doesn't even use
Just wears a
his
stopwatch. Yeah.
Yeah, as a stopwatch instead. When he said that, I was like, that needs to be clipped up and sent to every runner, because I think it's forcing us to run for the wrong reason.
Yeah. I often enjoy going out and back for that reason as well. So I don't have to think for the second half of it. So if I've got an hour, I just, find somewhere scenic or in the bush, and half an hour, and then I can just switch off the mind because I've just got to follow my footsteps on the way back. And I think that's another, and it brings me to the next point. I listened to your podcast last week, and the whole connection to country. You had Paul Callahan on, and I was just like, as runners, we're doing this a shitload too. Like, we are out in the bush. You look at the guys who go to Fernie every week, like, they don't probably know it or spin it and talk about it that way. But that's what he's talking about. And that's what I think a lot of distance runners and people that do the sport also do, like, just get out in the bush and just go to environments that a lot of the general population don't get to go to.
Yeah, so Dr. Paul Callaghan, who's an Indigenous man who was on our podcast, who was brilliant. And as you said, he just said that one of the keys in Indigenous mental health, well, I don't know if they call it mental health, but just well-being, is being connected to the outdoors, really, and trees and the dirt on the ground and the water and all that kind of stuff that come with going out to country and going out bush. And you're so right. Like, there's this run, I train at Clifton Hill in Melbourne. There's a Collingwood Harriers club.
Yep.
And there's a creek that runs along, it might have been
is it the Mary Creek? Is it Mary?
Mary Creek?
Yeah,
Mary Creek, you're right, Mary Creek. And there's this path that goes along there, and you find yourself, after about 5 minutes, you move away from the roads and you're on a dirt track, and there's just gum trees just like everywhere. You're surrounded by the gum trees. You have light sort of streaming through the trees. You can hear the trickling of the water at Mary Creek. You hear birds, a lot of birds, and you just feel very connected to outdoors and to nature. And the research and the science says that is unbelievably good for your mental health. But there's also an element of, one of the other things that's really good for mental health is being surrounded by things that remind you that you are really just a small thing in a very big piece of there's like huge trees, or the river, or just seeing things that, like, in nature, that amaze you. It's really good for you. It's like ocean swimming is really good for you for that reason. You're reminded of how small and insignificant you really are. And I think middle distance runners and long distance runners, I think that's one of the things, when they get injured and they start doing rehab or in a gym and are on a bike, I think that's one of the things that you probably don't realize, but that's one of the things you're really missing, is a connection to outdoors and to nature.
Yeah. Well, let's take it back to you though, mate, because I want to get into your shoes. Moose tells me that you slide into his DMs a bit at the running company. I think it was when he was in the running company Ballarat. Not sure if you purchased anything off him at the running company Geelong now. I went through your Instagram, saw a picture of you holding a pair of Next Percent, I think they were, after you'd been kicked out of swimming in a hotel lobby pond, not the actual swimming pool. And then I saw another pair where you were wearing, I think you wore the Dragonflies, the Nike Dragonflies, over 400 meters when you won that Vic Masters title. Both of those surprised me, because the Dragonfly is kind of a middle distance spike, and the Next Percenters are like, they're kind of 5K up kind of shoe. I'm not sure what you're doing in the Next Percenters, but tell me, and then tell me what else you're wearing.
Okay,
so collection.
Okay, can I actually take you back to my shoe story? Because I am obsessed with shoes, running shoes. I always have been. As a kid at primary school, when we're all sitting on the carpet and the teacher's reading a book, I just looked at everyone's shoes. That's just, I always just loved running shoes. I used to draw airbags on I had the first running shoes that mum and dad got me. Well, I had Dunlop volleys, like everyone had Dunlop volleys back in the 80s. But I had a pair of New Balance 995s, I think they were, like the original, their first iteration of a running shoe. And with a pen, I drew airbags on them, because I was like that obsessed with it already. I wanted to have my airbags. But because I wanted Air Max. That's what mum and dad are like, you're not getting Air Max. They're way too expensive. But my first ever pair of sprinting shoes, this is an amazing story. So grade 3 is when you start doing athletics, I think, in primary schools. And if you win the school meet, you get to go to the district. And I won the school one, then I got to do it in the 200. I got to go to the district. And I was very surprised. I was very surprised about winning that. And then I went to zone, which felt like the world championships, but I ended up sneaking home and winning that as well. And Dad was so excited because then I go to state championships. And Dad goes, I think you need a pair of spikes. He said, we're going to get you a pair of running spikes. And I couldn't believe it. So Dad calls a mate of his, who was also a parent at the school, Bill Hooker, former Australian 800 metre champion he ran the Commonwealth Games. And Dad said to Bill Hooker, Hugh's going to the state championships in a couple of weeks. Where do we get spikes? And Bill said, you don't need to spend much. He said, you don't need to spend much money. There's an op shop near where we live in Bourne, and they've always got this basket full of like old shoes. We'll find some there for him. And he said, I'll bring my son along. He'll love this as well. So Steve Hooker came along as well. So I got my first ever pair of spikes. They were a pair of orange and black Tigers, like leather, like proper leather. Somehow they're a bit too big for me. But Steve Hooker was there with me. He was 2 years below me at school.
This is gold medalist pole vaulter Steve Hooker for people that might not be sure what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So Steve Hooker, Australian gold medalist. He's there with me, and we're choosing my spikes, and we're both so excited. He was too young. He was in grade 1 at the time, but his dad was like, in a couple of years, mate, you can get a pair, but right now we're getting these for Hugh. And Steve was so excited. And there was this secondhand old pair of leather running spikes, and I slept them in my bed that night. Dad took them out. He's like, mate, you'll roll over and hurt yourself. You roll on those spikes. It's not like a cricket bat. You can't
rip
do this.
All your sheets up.
Yeah. But then from there, I didn't do very well at the state championships. In fact, I did quite poorly. But from then I sort of lost interest in running shoes. I wore, when I left school, it was always Asics Kayanos. I don't know why. That's just what I wore all the time.
Oh, they're the most expensive pair on the wall. So when you go in there, that's the one you buy because you think the cost is they're going to help you the most as a runner. I did the same when I started. Moose loves that story.
Yeah, but that's what you do, isn't it? I was like, well, this is going to make me the fastest. Surely that should be what it is.
$260, better buy those ones.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but they never. But then when I got back into running, I was like, I've got a thing now, developed a thing. I bought a pair of an old pair of Nike spikes. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember what they were, but they rubbed. I've got a Hagland deformity.
On the heel, Achilles, yep.
Yeah, which is like for everyone listening, it's like a little bone spur or like a burst that pops out the back of it. The only way to get rid of it is to have it surgically operated, and they have to take your
shave it off, don't they?
They shave, but before they shave it off, they have to detach your Achilles tendon from your heel.
That's ruined a lot of distance runners over the years.
Yeah, has it really? Okay, that's really interesting because I was like, when I heard that, I was like, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. Yeah. I'm just going to try and manage it. But it means I'm limited with the shoes I can wear. So the shoe that I wear now mainly for running, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, and everyone's going to go, what do you... In fact, I've had this conversation with Chicken at the running company because he cannot believe.
Yeah.
I can only really wear the Adidas Ultra Boost Climber, which the stability in those things, I can barely go around the corner without falling over. There's just no stability whatsoever, but they've got a really soft heel counter. So I just have to wear things with a really soft heel counter, and they tend to have the softest heel counter possible, for me anyway. So I've got like 4 pairs of those because I keep wearing those out. I did find that the Peg 37s were really good until I put on the Ultra Boost and realised they were just heaps better. But for me, I don't really do many long runs. For me, it's a warm up and a cool down basically up before sprint training. So it's not as important. And I got I bought the Vaporfly because I just had to experience them. I just like the stories I've heard about them. I just had to try them. And I've worn them. I love them so much. They're cheating. Like I just cannot believe how much quicker I am when I wear those things. But the only problem is when I take them off, and then I get into my spikes, I don't feel as quick. I feel slow.
Feels bad. Yeah.
And that's a bad feeling before you race a sprint, to feel slower than what you're currently wearing. So I've sort of, in fact, I've got them right here. You can see they're very white. I haven't worn them that much just because I don't feel good after. Anyway, the reason I wear the Dragonflies for the 400s, to answer your question, is, you know how they've got the hole on the back of the shoe?
Yep.
There's that hole. The Hagland pokes perfectly through the back.
Is that
Perfect.
a
I
good
thought,
thing?
yeah, because it's small enough that it doesn't rub. It fits perfectly
Okay.
through the back. And also, when I wore a sprinting spike, my Achilles just blow up the next day massively, and I can't walk downstairs, and I'm in agony. Whereas these, the first time I went to buy spikes from, went to Runner's World, and there was a girl, she would have been 19 or 20, serving me. I said, "Hi, I'm just starting sprinting again. I'm 38 years old. I'd like some sprinting spike, please." And she goes, and I saw these unreal looking Nike ones, like proper 100-meter sprinting ones. And I said, "What about these?" And she goes, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 38." And she goes, "I think we might start you in something like this." And she pulled out these things with a massive heel on them. And they didn't look anywhere near as cool. But I ignored her and got the sprinting ones, but my Achilles blew up so quickly. And I've just found for me that the Ultra Boost, they're not a great sprinting spike, but I can train in them and I don't get sore. My heel pokes out the back. Chicken from the running company sent me, and I keep plugging him because he's very good to me, Chicken. He sent me a pair of I wrote them down, the Air Zoom Max Fly, and they feel unreal. I think they're like more of a 400, 800 shoe. They feel unreal, but it's a pretty hard heel counter, so that's an issue for me at the moment. And this morning, I purchased the Air Zoom Victory, which has the bags at the front and a hole in the
1500
back.
meter kind of one. Would that be? Yeah.
The guy said, "Mate, this is an 800, 1500." He said it's 800 to 3000. And I said, "Yeah, I know, but it looks like a quicker shoe than the Dragonfly. So I think I'm going to give this a burst." So who knows? I'm going to try them tomorrow.
Sub 52. Here we come this summer.
Well, I feel like
have you set some goals?
Yeah, I have this ridiculous aim, which every time I have an aim which I'm embarrassed to admit because people just laugh at it. But the national record for men's 40 to 45 is 49.89, I think it is.
Who's got it? Do you know the name? Sorry, I'll put you on the spot here.
No, I've forgotten his name. I reckon it's a really old record. I think it's a really old record. In fact, I think it's like in the 90s or 80s or something like that. But I could be wrong. To me, that is just because when I ran the 52 second, I felt really good after it. I felt like I had more. And so at age 42, I feel like, because I'm new to the sport, I felt like there might be something I'm doing that's just really wrong that someone could see and go, "Oh, you're doing that. If you just try that." And then all of a sudden I'll drop 2 seconds off my time. I don't know. It's probably, I'll probably never get close to 52.1 again, but that's kind of, I'd love to get quicker than 52.1. I'd love to do that. Get into the 51s. What I don't know if I'm the only one who does this. I think it might be a cricket thing where when you play cricket, you exaggerate your average. You always round up. So I actually ran a 52.19, but when people ask me, I go, "It was 52.1." And when it was, so I don't know if I'm the only one who does that, but I'm very good at rounding down.
My marathon PB is 2 hours 19:53, but I never say the seconds. I'm like a 2 hours 19 guy. Like, although I was only 7 seconds off being a 2:20 guy, I'm a 2:19 guy, and no one cares about the seconds in a marathon. Just got under.
By the way, that is unbelievably fast. How long ago was that?
That was in Berlin in 2018. And you're probably the only person that thinks it's fast because the other two boys are 2 hours 14 and 2 hours 17. So they give me shit about it all the time about being so much slower than them. But
yeah. 2 minutes slower in a marathon. That's not that. It's much slower.
Thanks, Hugh. I'll pass that on to the boys. But yeah, I know. But even that goal setting thing, I think we're wired interesting in running where we're never quite happy. Like it's,
that's an issue. That's an issue.
Yeah, you notice that as well. Like I always thought
massively.
Breaking 30 minutes for 10K was the thing. And then you break it and you're like, oh, I just feel exactly the same. Like your life does not change at all.
Yeah, every day of my life when I do a talk and I talk about a thing called the if and then model of happiness, which is where we say to ourselves, if I buy this car, then I feel happy. If I buy this house, then I feel happy. And inevitably you buy the house, feels good for a bit, then you just wish you had a better house. Nothing has blown that up. There's nothing more. I've managed to do a lot of work to not be affected by that, like car, house, job, salary. I'm like, do you know what? I've got good stuff in my life, but I cannot get past this with running. I cannot. Last season, I was injured my hammies are useless, and I only got to race 3 times. And I raced the last race of the season. I hadn't raced in 3 months, and I ran a 53 seconds flat, which is the second fastest time I've ever run. And I was really flat about myself. I was really down on myself. I was like, oh, it's not a 52-1. And then I'm like, of course it's not. Like, you're 42 years old. You haven't raced in 3 months. Like, it took me a long time to be happy with that because it wasn't the fastest I've ever run. And I have noticed that with runners a lot. I train with Kevin Rasool, who's a 56.5 400-meter runner. Like, he's seriously fast.
46.
Well, yeah, 46. Did I say 56?
Just ripped him.
Oh,
Yeah. Just made him slower than you.
Sorry, Kev. Kev is a lot. Kev is one of the best human beings I've met in my life, and I've met him through running. But at 40, there are so many great human beings in the running community. I've been very blessed to meet a lot of them. But 46.5, and he raced. He hadn't raced in a while because he's got chronic fatigue, and he raced, and he was so shattered because he ran a 47.7, I think it was, and he was devastated. And I was looking at him going, mate, if I could run 47.7, I would be the happiest man alive. But I know if I somehow magically got down to that, I'd be going, well, if I get under 47.5. And I think all runners need to get back to the reason that we run, and it's for the love of it. Like, I love the feeling of running fast. That's what it is. At the end of the race, I can get a 53 second and go, I should be reflecting on the fact that I'm 42 years old and I'm running. That's a win. Like, that is a win for me. I'm so lucky to be doing that. And I think it's something I have noticed in running. We're so good at paying attention to the negatives. We're so good at paying attention to things that don't, like, there's so much to celebrate about running, but we rarely stop and do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the whole social media stuff probably doesn't make it easier as well. Like, just, makes it bigger. And that grass is always greener on the other side, kind of when you look out to it.
Totally. And I'm sure it must be so, like, I'm not elite. I'm imagining for elite runners and people who run marathons as fast as you guys do, it must be even more so when the amount of time and effort you put in and the amount of thought and everything. I really think it must be a whole new level of, like, sorry, my phone keeps beeping here. Sorry. It must be a whole new level of that, compare and despair. You look at someone you train with your entire life, all of a sudden got a lot quicker, and you can't help but go, why aren't I doing that? Rather than just going, I love that person. I'm so happy for them. That's how we should be, but such a competitive environment.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Hugh, I haven't got much longer with you, but I've got some quick fire questions for you, if you're happy to take them.
Go for it.
Favorite workout and why?
My favorite at the moment is a session I'm doing, which I actually learnt through Feed the Cats. I wish I could remember that guy's name for you. Sorry, but if people look up Feed the Cats sprinting, it's he's got all these lectures online.
We'll put in the show notes.
My favorite session is 3 by 300s with a 10-minute rest in between. So for middle distance runners, it sounds a bit like, that's ridiculous. Why are you resting for so long?
Nah, we get it though. Speed kills.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I saw him do that with his athletes that session, and they looked so unwell afterwards. I was like, I've got to try that. And I did the first one. I did it in 40 seconds, the first 300 I did it in. And then the next one I did 40 again. And with the last 20 meters, I felt as sick as I've felt in a long time. And I was with Kevin Rasool at the time, and he said, I don't know if there's any point doing the third one. He said, I just feel like the quality's going to be pretty poor. You're going to do it in probably 43, 44. Let's just do a 150 to finish. And let's try and do it in, 18 seconds or whatever he said. I can't remember what he said, maybe 18, 19 seconds. And I said, I just want to see what this feels like. So we did the third one, and I think I did it in 41 seconds. I didn't do another session for another 3 days because I didn't feel like I needed to. Like, I felt like my body was recovering for 3 days. It's like a proper lactate session, and it was so brutal. But the impact it had on me, the next time I stood up to do a 400, I felt like this is nothing. I did 300s. Like, you're right, speed kills. It's 900 meters total. That's it. But my God, full on. So that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I'll let you do 3 athletes for this one, but we'll leave Kat Bissett out because she's the easy one. I think everyone would expect you to say her number one, but 3 could be Australian, could be international athletes that are like super inspirational for you. You look up to, you like how they operate. Who comes to mind? Of course, Kat's there, but give me 3 more.
I love Stewie McSwaney for the way I love Stewie for the way he goes about it. Like that, this reckless confidence that he has. He doesn't necessarily. He lets his running do the talking first of all, and he just throws him. He throws himself into winning positions, which I just love so much, and I admire so much because I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. So I love him. Nina Kennedy. I'm a huge fan of Nina Kennedy, the pole vaulter.
Goes under the radar being from WA too, I find.
Totally. And I just reckon I don't know. I reckon there's a story there as well. I don't know what it is, but the fierce competitive nature that sort of tends to bring the best out of her. There's some athletes that you see on centre stage, you can see it almost a little bit too much. And it happens to athletes all the time. It happens to me as well sometimes. In my 400s, when no one's watching, I feel a bit overwhelmed by it or get too nervous. But I love watching her. I love watching her compete. I love watching when the going gets tough. You can see her going, oh, I'm on here, and I love this. She looks like she loves the competition, so I do love that.
But it seems like she's so chilled when she's not competing. Like the contrast between on and off for her seems like just different ends of the scale. And I've only seen her on TV kind of thing. Don't know anything about her, but she strikes me as someone who's very relaxed and then goes to very competitive very quickly.
Yeah, and I think you've summarized that perfectly. And I think that's why it's so obvious the competitive nature, because when she's not competing, like you said, she's just like anyone, just going about her business, just so down to earth. And so, so I love Nina. She's, I can't believe how she should have a much bigger profile than she does. I don't know. I think maybe because she's from Perth, that she's training in Perth. I don't know. But I mean, the World Championships followed by the Commonwealth Games is unbelievable. I love Del Santos, the 4x400 meter hurdle. I love him. I just something.
An interesting story as well, doesn't it? Like, did he have the burns? Like, that's him.
Boiling water. I think it was boiling water when he was a kid, tipped all over his head.
Yeah.
And horrific scars. But just watching him move is pretty special. You've asked for 3, and I'm going to give you 4. As far as watching an athlete, Peter Bowl, I could just watch him. I mean, I did the other day. He was at Collingwood when I was training, and I'd finished my session and I was late to get back to work, but I just sat and watched him train. I watched him train for like an hour, and I tried to talk to him. He walked past me, and I was like, I'm going to chat to him here. And I went, "G'day, mate." I thought he'd finish. "G'day, mate." And he goes, "How you going?" And just kept walking. He walked straight past me. I was like, "Yeah, I'll just pretend I was going to walk a lap anyway."
Bendirio Boyer, have you seen her getting around that group as well? She's
a very smooth
operator. Yeah, she's got a good documentary out at the moment as well on SBS.
It's on my. I've got a lot of travel coming up for my shows that I'm doing around the country, and I've got it in my head as something to watch on the plane. I don't know her too well. I haven't seen much of her around, but incredible story as well. But I know I'm not allowed to say Katrina, but Katrina's not only one of the best athletes I've ever seen. She's also one of the best people I've ever met, and inspires me every single day just to be better as a person. Really, she's just a beauty.
We'll link in her episode with you in our show notes as well, because I think people find it fascinating if they haven't already listened to it, to then hear how you've spoken about it today, to then go back to hearing the interview before all this kind of kicked off. And then the final one I often ask people is, what's on the bedside table? What book are you reading at the moment? Got something on the go?
Oh, good question. What's it called?
Geez, it must be good.
I don't want to get the name right. It's like Run Like the Kenyans or Running with the Kenyans.
Running with the Kenyans, yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't read it. I read it. I started reading it many years ago, and then I've just picked it up. Well, it was like 2 years ago, and I picked it up, and I'm getting into it again. It's not relevant to me because it's all about long distance, like marathon running, but I'm just finding that fascinating. I've read also, my memory for names is so bad. Ralph Dubell's book, Ralph Dubell, the 800 meter runner. I've read that. Is a ripping book.
Have you read Peter Norman's? Surely.
Yes, I've read Peter Norman's as well. Yep. And learning about Tamsin Lewis's dad around that time as well, which has really been fascinating. But at the moment, and I'm reading. It's a bit boring for runners, but I'm reading about Stoicism a lot at the moment. So,
Ryan Holiday.
Yeah. I've been into that as well. So it's all really fascinating stuff. But I do love running books. I wish there were more. I don't know if anyone's got recommendations for sprinters books. I don't think there are many sprinting books out there that I'm aware of that are any good. But if anyone knows, if they could, when this episode goes up, if people could comment on the Instagram page of any good sprinting books I know, that'd be great.
We'll see how we go. Peter Norman's son actually lives in Echuca, where I'm from, and there's one bloody Strava segment I can't get over like 100 meters. He's obviously got that natural speed from Peter, and I've had that many cracks at it. And he probably said it 5 or 6 years ago, and it's just sat there, and everyone has a go at it, and no one can get it. So
what a legend!
Got that
like
connection
father,
there.
like son.
Yeah.
Like father, like son. That's so good.
Hey, Hugh, thanks so much for your time. That hour went super fast. I think we're in a bit of flow state there because the
Totally.
time totally got away from us there. And thanks for, all you do and all the other aspects of your life and putting all that good content out there. And I couldn't recommend more listeners for Hugh's books and Hugh's podcast. And if you have an opportunity to go see him speak, definitely take it. So, and thanks for being in the running circles and a fan of running to kind of help our sport grow and promote it.
If anyone sees me out running, stop and say hi. I love chatting to other runners and hearing their story. I think I see them all the time around the track and I just love it. It's a great community to be part of. And thanks for having me. There are 2 podcasts I listen to religiously, Hamish and Andy and Inside Running Podcast. They're my 2. So to be on this is like the girls outside the office here were like, I was doing a few notes and I said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, got a podcast coming up. And they said, you have never taken notes before. And I went, yeah, I really want to do well with this one.
Oh, that's good. We had a staff meeting last night. We didn't have a staff meeting. We spoke off air last night and the boys are like, what are you going to ask him? And I'm just like, I just want to ask him stuff so much about running because I know you speak about so many other. I didn't want you to just have to spit out all the resilience project kind of stuff.
No, I'm sick
again.
of it. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It was good just to talk mainly running stuff today. And appreciate your honesty and stuff.
All right, legend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Hugh. I'm going to stop recording here.